Hey, it's Dalton Orwig. Here we are at Tobias and Comer, their law office in Midtown Mobile on Dauphin Street. Going to go in and see what's going on. Come on. Welcome back to Mobile Mornings here on FM Talk 106.5, and it's time for another edition of Law 251, but this time a very special edition of Law 251, something we haven't done before. I'm actually on scene. I'm here at the Tobias and Comer Law offices on Dauphin Street and beautiful Midtown Mobile, and Desi Tobias is here, so is Bryan Comer, so is Lacey Smith. You've heard them all on Law 251 before, usually one at a time, but while we're here, have them all three together. Desi, first, let's talk about where we are, the building, and then we'll get into this specific room and why that's important for clients. But tell me about your office here on Dauphin Street.
Yeah, we're here at 1203 Dauphin Street. It's an office that I've been in since for 30 years. It's an old house. It was built in 1852. I always love to tell people that and go through the history of it. Bryan, Lacey, and I have been practicing personal injury law here. Together, between all three of us, we have 75 years of practice in that particular area and experience. We're all here and grew up in this community, in the Mobile community. We've raised our children here. It's a very important part of our lives, and we like to do what we can to help the community.
Yes, and it's a beautiful building. I've been here a couple times now. I have to say, one of the things you worry about when you come to a building in Midtown or downtown is parking. You guys have plenty of parking out there. It's really easy for folks to pull in and then come in to the office. And we've talked so often in studio about kind of what that process is like for someone who has an injury case and wants to contact someone who can help them. And when they contact you guys, first we give them the phone number and say to call and get your take on it and whether it's something worth following up on. But once they do that, let's go through that pre-trial process. Once they knock on the door here, we're in the conference room. Is this where you meet with them? Is that the first step, or does something happen before that?
Yeah, it really does start in here. And so this is where we find out what their problem is. What is it that's happened to them or to a loved one? And we get the information that we need in order to start our investigation and to vet the case and to find out, okay, is this something that we can pursue and help the client. But this is where we gather the information. We get all the information from them, and then we can start about the things that we do to prove our case.
Yeah, because you do need the client to provide, well, certainly the information of what happened, but the weight that you guys carry through the case is vast. And we've talked about how much of a deep dive you go into each individual case and how personally you take it. So does that start pretty much immediately after you learn about what your client has gone through? What do you do after that, Lacey?
So what we really wanted to do here today was kind of pull the curtain back on a lawsuit from the client's perspective and what is required of someone who decides to pursue a legal action after they're injured. So like Bryan said, we do our intake, and that's an important part on our side. We want to make sure that we're bringing cases that are worthy and are fit for a court of law. But there's a lot of homework and background that goes into that. And really, the first step is doing a investigation of the product, if it's a products case, or going to the scene of the accident. So, if it's a car wreck, of course, we'll go to that intersection, and we will do our best to recreate and capture the scene as it was on the night of the accident. Same thing with a slip and fall or a death on a premises. We want to go actually to where these injuries happened and make sure that we're capturing what it looked like on the day of the event so we can present that to a jury down the road.
Okay. And that starts pretty much immediately after you learn of the case from the client?
That's one of the first steps, and that's going to be one of the things that's going to be hands off for the client usually, unless we need them to tell their story about, I was turning here, or this was the hallway, or that sort of thing. But usually that's going to be the lawyers and the experts. So we don't want to downplay anything that's asked of a client throughout the course of litigation, but we do want to make sure everybody knows that it's not the day-to-day work of a case is on us as your lawyers.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things actually that I tell, the client is, look, let us then take this off of your shoulders. You worry about healing. You worry about dealing with grief if you've lost someone. You worry about getting better. Let us take that off of your shoulders. Let us deal with the insurance agents or adjusters. Let us deal with opposing counsel once we file suit. But then once we meet that point where we vetted the lawsuit, we figured out the issues involved, then we file a complaint, which is the document that then initiates the lawsuit process called litigation. And so that's where we then engage in different things like discovery and finding experts and things like that to get the case ready for trial.
And here at the law offices of Tobias and Comer Law on Dauphin Street, beautiful building here. If you haven't been by, absolutely wonderful and very old, as Desi said, but you wouldn't know it looking in here. It's just absolutely fantastic. And kind of walk through that pre-trial checklist of how things get done. And I want to keep going through that, but you guys were talking about, what the client has to provide. And you've had so many clients over the years and so many who continue keeping up with you after their case is long gone, because that's how much that kind of, I guess, friendship developed with some of your clients and you, because you've worked so hard for them and taken their cases so personally. But Desi, talk a little bit more about why it's important that you take a lot of that load off of the client's shoulders, because they've already been through something traumatic.
Yeah, we like the client to be involved as much as they want to. If they want to contact us, we're accessible. We always provide information back and forth. It's not somebody that you can't reach. All three of us are involved in the cases, so are our paralegals. But we know what to do, and I've done this now. I'm going on 40 years. And you name the case in the personal injury spectrum. I've specialized in like maritime law, products law, any kind of negligence law, injury law in general. I have seen the case. I am familiar with it. I know what's important, what's not. I know the experts in that area. And that's why they come to us, because we are the experts. And so we take that burden and run with it. It also involves putting our expense, our time and money in the cases that we deem are worthwhile pursuing. And we know the law. We write the briefs. You wouldn't believe that the time and effort we put in to make sure that the product that we put in the court is superb. It's the best it can possibly be. And that's something that we do as lawyers. And again, the client can be involved. They know what's going on, but it's our job to make that successful.
And as old as the law is, it's still ever changing. And we've talked so often about how you guys are staying updated on the latest that's always coming down the pike. Talking with Desi Tobias, Bryan Comer, and Lacey Smith here at their offices on Dauphin Street, Law 251. And what's next? So have we talked about a deposition and where that kind of falls into this line of things?
Yeah. So after, we file the lawsuit, we've done our background and all that. We file the lawsuit and we engage in the written discovery. Then we sit for depositions. That's where the client and fact witnesses, the opposing client, all sit for depositions at different times. And they come into a room just like this one. A lot of times it is this room, and they're sworn in, and then they give testimony. They answer questions one at a time from the lawyers. We prepare the client before the deposition, what we expect is going to happen, help them, to feel at ease going into the process, and then ultimately to get in and to do their best and to tell the truth and to testify as to what happened, to get their story out there. And then we're here with them through that process too. And so then from there, once all the depositions have been taken, then the case is ready for trial. And I think that's going to be the subject of another show, but that pretty much encapsulates it from the moment they walk in the door up into the trial.
Yeah, and that'll be great. We need to have a part 2 of this where we talk about kind of the next steps after that. And we've talked about this so often, Lacey, but when you're the victim in one of these cases, when you're the one who's been injured or whatever the case is you're bringing, it's important that you have as much information as you can personally gather there on the scene. Is that fair to say? Or if it's a product you're harmed by, kind of what do people need to have with them when they first give you that call before all this process starts taking off?
Sure. Any notes that you've taken, any photographs at a scene, those are always going to be important, because you're going to be the only person that's there at the time of your injury, or someone standing next to you, a loved one. Any photographs of your injuries or the scene at the time of those injuries is vitally important. notes, medical records, you can name it. We're going to reach out for all those things. And again, that does require some client involvement. We'll be reaching out to you for your medical providers and that sort of thing. But personal impressions, notes, that sort of stuff is something we're always definitely interested in.
Sounds like you guys work really hard for your clients, try to make it as easy as possible on them in a really difficult time generally for those clients. This has been great. I've loved visiting your office. I'll come back. We'll do part 2 of this. This podcast will be available just like all the rest of them are, TobiasComerLaw.com. That's where we put all of our Law 251 podcasts, also anywhere that the FM Talk 106.5 podcasts are uploaded to. And one more time before we leave, what's that phone number for someone who wants to give you a call? And that line's open 24/7.
That's right, 251-432-5001.
All right, Desi, Bryan, Lacey, thanks for having me out here. So far, my favorite edition of Law 251. Can't wait to come back.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Thank you for coming, Dalton.
All right, that does it for this hour of Mobile Mornings, this episode of Mobile Mornings. Coming up next, the Jeff Poor Show. He's on the way next.